Hello, I'm Daniel James. Welcome to Livewire. Joining me on this week's show is Jaffa Moore. Hello, Jaffa. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning, good day, good afternoon.
Good evening.
We've got you on here today onto Livewire because you've got a fantastic single out
Thank you.
called You and I. And tell us all about it, sir.
You and I actually was sitting, my eldest daughter, Amber, who helped produce the video. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's got quite a few people in it. And we were sitting and said, God, wouldn't it be amazing to create something? How about winning an Oscar? How do we win an Oscar? Literally. So we had this great idea. We'd do a song. And because of Roger, my father, his dedication to the organization UNICEF, we thought what a wonderful thing to do is to win an Oscar for him, dedicate it to him. And then he says, and this is, create more awareness for my cause and what I believe in and stuff like that. And then got all excited, thought we could write a nice little charity song, etc. And then the only way the Academy would consider an Oscar for consideration, you have to make a film. So we went, oh, there's the rub. The tail's starting to wag the dog. So what we did was we created this satirical documentary called And the Winner Isn't, on how to win an Oscar. And everyone we interviewed had never won one before. But we would say, so what's it like to win an Oscar? And he says, no, unfortunately, I didn't win one. So the journey was, okay, how we can actually win an Oscar? Let's write a song and get as many people in it, and then submit that with the excuse that it's part of a feature documentary, because a feature documentary can be considered best song, best score, as a best score. And so that's really how it all came about with You and I. It took about...
What's your writing process? To write the song, are you a guy that sits at the guitar, the keyboards, or do you come up with a melody and suddenly put it down?
It depends. Sometimes I don't know if it happens to you. You're a songwriter. You wake up in the middle of the night and you go, "Oh my God, I just created a symphony." And then by the time you get down to the piano,
in the middle of the night. I mean, yeah, I can come up with a chorus in the middle of the night. Jaffa Moore's coming up with a symphony in the middle of the night.
It's literally. You're
a busy man.
It probably lasted 3 seconds, but it felt like 3 minutes.
That's what they all say.
And
sorry,
no pun intended. So this sort of running down the stairs and going, oh, I've lost it. It's not there. It depends. Sometimes it's a word, an idea, it comes to my head and I go, oh, let's see how can that then be put to music? Because words like, John Williams, I believe, Superman, he did the thing. If you listen to the da 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 Superman, so he took the word Superman and created the ba-ba-da. So sometimes it's a bit of that with a word. Other times I always force myself to sit in front of the piano 5 minutes, play something. There's a dictaphone. Don't record it. Get up, make a cup of tea, come back. If I remember it, then I know that this is the beginning of something that might be okay.
It's worth it.
Then I record it, or else I've done this, and you go down and then you look back and you go, what was I thinking? So
as a writer, we all have different processes. I tend to go for a walk and come up with something. But you're right. I came up with an idea yesterday and I walked around the supermarket and I'd forgotten it by the time I got to the end. Yeah. So just like you, I thought it wasn't worth remembering.
Yeah.
So
we're getting old.
What about your influences growing up? Because, you've had a bit of an international upbringing, really. I mean, how many countries were you living in as a child when you were growing up?
Well, I must have schooled in a good 15 schools.
Right.
Kept moving about. A lot of it.
Were you on the run?
On the that's a good name for a song. On tuition, when my dad would do 2 films back to back, we would go with him. But the sort of the influence, I'm a Londoner, born in England. The first. I'm not sure I actually heard it, but it was that how much is that dog key in the window? It was that basic, but then hitting the the sort of the likes of, and basically the album Photograph is a, I don't know if you've had time to hear it, but
You know what, Jeff? I've been listening to it this week. My favorite, I mean, I like quite a lot of them, but my favorite track is Present.
Amazing, fantastic.
I love that track. I think I don't know whether you've thought about a follow-up yet. To me, that's your natural progression. You tell me how Photograph came about. Sorry, tell me how Present came about.
Present. Well, it's actually, if it's up to me, then I'd rather be with you, whomever it is, in my arms tonight. I've got nowhere to go, and so I catch the evening show. My fate's on borrowed time. So I follow my heart, bittersweet from the start, as I wrestle my peace of present mind. I come under attack, scrutiny, and I bounce back, commuting this train of life. So it's a struggle, your everyday, and how to overcome boredom, how to give up smoking, or how to give up drugs, or whatever it is. And that's make me happy. It's not to the girl. It's actually, you do it for yourself. Yeah, it sounds very pretentious singing about yourself.
No. So, is that autobiographical? Is that about inner battles that maybe you've had yourself?
Yes. Yeah. I didn't realize while I was writing it where it came from.
Right. Any battles in particular?
Goodness. I mean, nothing.
Growing up in a show business life, there must have been loads of temptations when you were growing up.
Yeah.
Did you find any of them a journey worth taking, and then a journey worth leaving?
Well, whether they were taken or left or used, used that opportunity, made the most of that opportunity. I think the story is in why it's taken so long to put this album together. I never thought I could actually write music, and I've been told it's not bad, it's okay, and I'm always pushing.
I think it's a lovely album. I mean, forgive me, these are meant as compliments, but when I listened this week, I'm hearing Peter Gabriel, I'm hearing Coldplay, I'm hearing Paul McCartney, the Beatles, Jeff Lynne, and I'm thinking to myself, when you were growing up, whichever country you were in, they must have been feeding into you, when you put the radio on. What records did you, any in particular that you listened to when you were growing up?
Yes, I would say that the ones that, and the album cover photograph that pictured me, the reason why that is when I remember, and it was sort of the likes of Steve Miller, Fly Like an Eagle, Bowie, Elton John, Supertramp,
yes,
Barry White, goodness, that the mix and Earth, Wind and Fire, and that sort of slow progression, and as the sort of I like the demographic that this could hit this album, because it is the influence of live instruments meets the electronic ones in the 80s. So the 70s live bands, and then the 80s electronic, and so the likes of Georgia Moroder.
Supertramp. It's funny. Yeah. I had Supertramp, and I can hear them. Influences like you've soaked them up. As a kid growing up, probably,
completely. And you when you hear the end prompt, and I didn't really until you said that, reminds me of that, and I'm thinking, wow, that's probably very much the subconscious that's sort of sitting there, that's just brewing. And also, having spent a lot of time in California, there's a bit of the. It was interesting, a bit of the sort of, like a Tom Petty kind of style. And so
there definitely is. Some great guitar on there.
Yeah.
Do you play yourself, or did you?
I do.
Musicians in?
I get someone who knows how to do. I can play enough to write. That's as good as I'm a frustrated musician. But I think I'm okay with knowing who's good. Apart from that Nile Rodgers is fantastic. So when Nile comes,
if you don't mind me asking, I've got two questions to start with. I'm just going to quickly go. You talked about confidence and never thinking that I thought I could maybe write an album or write a thing. If you don't mind, I just want to explore that really. Why do you think you struggled with that? Because, the album's great, the single's great. You obviously can write and compose. Where was that inner struggle? Did you want to do this as a teenager and you thought you couldn't do it? What held you back?
That's a good question. When I signed to EMI in 1985, I did a song with Mike Rutherford, Mike and the Mechanics, and it was sort of like, well, I wasn't really, you throw as many logs on the fire and one's going to catch, and I was kind of thrown into it. I didn't realize what I really wanted to do. I knew that, having been a child actor, I knew that I'm growing up on movie sets and stuff. Just because my dad's an actor doesn't necessarily make me one. And so I thought, this might be the right way forward. And love music and love singing. I wasn't hungry enough. I get a record deal at 85. I go to Los Angeles, do a song with Rick James, of all people. And so then I look back and I go, what does Mike Rutherford and Rick James have in common? Nothing. It's me, who doesn't believe in what I'm doing. Wow. And that's why it never happened. So it's a bit of a bittersweet kind of, I wasn't hungry enough. Maybe too young, too whatever. Very privileged.
So you're thinking you didn't appreciate those opportunities?
I certainly didn't appreciate it, and I did not take it seriously enough. And then how this has all come about. I was writing for someone, and I sent these demos in to John Kaufman, writes Recording Nova Universal, and he said, send some more songs. I said, well, the artist, unfortunately, she couldn't make it, so I've had to. The engineer put a guide vocal down, and they said, well, we'd like to meet the engineer. So I showed up in London, and I sat there for 5 minutes and said, sorry, I can't hold this anymore. It's actually me. So in a sense, it wasn't meant to be me, in a sense.
Unless you believe in fate, and maybe, fate's been saying, come on, Jaffa, you can do this.
Well, this is the belief in, Universal and
do you still feel that as performers, a lot of us have that voice on the shoulder. If you can't do it, you can't do it. If you've got a night before the play or night before you're recording your new single or your video, you always, some of us, maybe not all, do you think you still have that voice? Are you still, you've got the album out, the single's in the Heritage chart, it's doing well, it's getting loads of airplay. When are you going to say, I can do this, I'm one of the players?
When my second album comes out.
Right. And are you planning that? Are you thinking, are you humming?
Loads of ideas. Right. And it's really annoying saying, God, I wish I would have put this one on there, or wish I would, yeah.
But it's a work in progress, isn't it?
It is a work in progress. And I know that the next, if all goes well and there is a second album, it's going to get better, because the jingles and ideas I put down, I go, wow, at this stage, it sounds like this. I know what it sounded like when I photograph in the early stages, and then when you hear the end result, well, these first stages, and I can hear the end result considering we've done the album, I'm going to be even more confident with the material.
But that's fantastic to hear, because you're growing. Your confidence is growing musically and, producing wise and all that kind of thing. So that the journey is a good journey, isn't it?
Yeah, most definitely.
Now, I just want to go back to Photograph, because when I looked at the album cover, there's little Jaffa. Can I ask you, just before we go to the photograph, Jaffa?
Yeah.
How did the name Jaffa? Because you were obviously christened Jeffrey. So, what Jaffa? Did you come up with it?
No, I spent some time in Lebanon, and Jeffrey's, in Arabic is Jaffa.
Right. Okay.
So, and I started to be called Jaffa, and then when Nile Rodgers walks into the studio and he says, "Hey Jaffa, how's it going?" Then that's it.
It kind of sticks, doesn't it?
No, it's kind of sticks.
When the king of the bass line says it, you've got to stick with it, haven't you? So going back to the photograph, you're sitting there. It looks like it's in the back of a cab or something. I'm not really sure, but it's a really great shot. And I look back on my life, and I have a photograph very similar. It's sort of a young boy, a little bit chubby and stuff. Yeah, am I right in thinking? Forgive me if I'm wrong. I read somewhere that as a teenager or a young guy, you struggled a little bit with your weight.
I did. I was very heavy to the point where I didn't want to I didn't go around saying I'm son of James Bond, because it was quite embarrassing. He's a superhero and he's got a fat, chubby cellulite.
When did it start? Was it at school?
It was probably in school. When we used to go to the dentist, on the way out, they'd give you sweets.
Listen, may I just take you back a bit? I was reading that in 2004, you got the intellectual property rights to The Saint.
Yes, correct.
It's really strange. This morning, when I got up, I was flicking through the channels, and of course, your dad, Sir Roger Moore, comes on episode 6 or something of series 5, and I thought, what a great omen for today, And of course, your dad, handsome, suave, young, carrying that series when he was young. I know he'd been in Maverick and other stuffs before that. But do you still have the property rights to the Saint?
No, they expired because it's on an intellectual basis where the option lasts 2 years, 3 years, depending on how heavy and what exactly you're buying. You can exercise the option for television, and a separate option would be for motion picture. And so you can actually put it in a bundle, which they don't usually do because they stand to make money on both sides. So if I buy the rights to the TV and someone else comes along and buys the rights to make a film, there could be a conflict. So you end up saying, okay, I'm going to protect. I believe that this is a TV property. It's not really for tele. It needs elongation. It's tough to tell a good story. The Equalizer was sort of the American version of it. Denzel Washington, originally the English chap. What was his name?
Famous actor, elderly gentleman.
Yeah, New York. Yeah, that was the original. But it's funny enough. It worked as a film. The Saint, the actual movie, which my partner produced, Bill McDonald created Rome, the series for BBC HBO. Produced with Val Kilmer, The Saint. And if you wouldn't have called it The Saint, it was a terrific film. It just didn't really have much to do with Leslie Charteris,
Exactly. I mean, having watched it, as you say, it could have been about anybody else apart from that classic character. And in my thinking, it's a shame you don't still have the rights because it's 21 years, she had it. And I just thought it might be a great opportunity for a producer to find a new star because your dad became a huge star through The Saint. And wouldn't it be great to find a new actor today and reinvent The Saint?
Absolutely. It is quite heavy, though, bottom heavy, that is. It's very expensive intellectual. So in order for it to be picked up by a network, you're adding on 25,000 to the bill, another 25,000. So per episode, before you get started, you're already at 150,000. And, if you look at a season, that's not the production cost either. So it becomes very expensive. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. It's so old and it's so expensive. They can get away with it. They don't need to. The state can dictate, command that price. Right. So it is quite bottom heavy to get off the ground.
So you wouldn't think about going back into like maybe producing something?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I'm working on a project, split to early days, but working with a brilliant director who we all know, but I don't want to jinx it. Early days, and that's been making now a year and a half putting together, and we'll see if it's a network cable. We'll see what the format is.
How old were you, if you can remember back? How old would you have been when your dad was doing The Persuaders with Tony Curtis?
Well, in the beginning, the two opening sequence when the two faces come down like that. The one on the left is me. So that age is probably where the picture photograph.
Yes.
70s.
So did you go on location with your dad? Did you go over and see places? Because was it filmed all over Europe?
The Persuaders, they shot it. The pilot was shot in the south of France, and they shot extra stuff so that on episode 3 they'd be back in the UK, and then they'd have the footage that they shot the extra hours on the pilot and used it. So it was actually more. It felt like it was always moving around, but they actually spent a lot of time in the south of France shooting as much.
It had that fast-paced feel. You're right. Completely. It did feel like they were moving around.
Yeah.
Did your dad work as a producer on that as well?
Not on the Persuaders, or did he?
I was just reading that.
Actually, he was involved. He was involved.
Yeah, because I read that. I mean, I don't know whether I'm right, but I was reading that. Tony Curtis was keen to, do his day's work and leave the set, whereas your dad was more involved.
But he did bring it to. It was him and Bob Baker that brought it to Tony, and Bob Baker was Roger's partner on The Saint as well, and he directed a couple, Roger as well. So they did have they weren't taking the sort of points as they do today on TV shows.
No.
Yeah, it's a shame that those residuals.
Yes.
They were getting, they just didn't have that in place those days. So he might have taken an EP fee, executive producer fee for one show, and not, I'll defer my salary and take points on the later date, that kind of thing.
Growing up, I mean, you know, there's pros and cons to everyone's lifestyle wherever you are. It must have been fascinating for you, all these different stars dropping by, you know, when you were at home, maybe. Did you, you know, do you have any memories of any particular star coming by? Did you have a teenage crush on any of them?
I did. I did. I did. I did.
And you're going to share it with me.
I'm not going to share it with you.
Did it remain, you don't have to say who it was, but did it remain a crush?
A little bit more than that.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
See, there are bonuses. You see, young lad.
There you go.
You know, do you, are they, do you still bump into them ever?
Sadly, no.
Oh, okay. I just noticed a bit of a blush there. So, very interesting. Very interesting. So, going back to being a young lad, you know, the time when you had the photograph taken that you've used on the album, would that have been around the time that you actually performed in a couple of films yourself? You know, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes, the Sherlock Holmes New York, Charlotte Rampling, John Huston. Yes, it was about that. A little. That picture is a little earlier, probably a year or two. So I was talking 74, between 74 and 76.
And was it fun? I mean, was it fun doing that? One of them you worked with your dad was in it, wasn't he?
Yes, it was. I love the idea of, you know, love studios, the sets, the smell of the smell of the stage, the sound stage.
Years ago, they used to say, you know, if we were talking to an old actor maybe 40 years ago, they just said, darling, we love the smell of the grease paint. Of course, they don't use grease paint anymore, but you're right. There is when you walk on a set, there's a smell, there's a feeling, isn't it? And you obviously soaked that up being on set with your dad, and then you got it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that's you know, the sound stage, you walk in and there's that sort of nullified, dense thud that, and everything's, you can hear a pin drop. And so it's, and then red light, quiet, ding, 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 ding. Good feeling.
And another feeling I always get from a set is, you know, people like the Chippies and the set, you know, all those kind of people, they're so important, you know.
Very true.
Without them, it just doesn't come together, does it?
Absolutely. And that's why, you know, what makes, like, true movie stars Tom Cruise, you know, he recognizes that everyone is so important. That's why he's the last one to leave, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Would you think about acting again? I mean, I know you see, when you do the next album, you're going to have to appear in a video, or even for the next single, you're going to have to appear in a video.
I'd love to. No, I'd love to.
Because obviously with you and I, you're not really in it, are you? It's just stars.
It's stars. I mean, I actually had to put me more in it because there wasn't enough. It was just me once just singing the mic. So they went back and John got in the editing room, Universal, and said, no, you know, you're the artist, we need to put you in there more. And so I thought, no, listen to us. You need to put your mug, need to see your mug a bit more.
So on the next single, it's got to be, you've got to get a whole video, you've got to be in it. Have you thought about what the next single from the album's going to be?
Well, we'll see what, you know, what comes next.
And how does it feel being in the Heritage chart? Do you know much about it?
I do. No, well, yes. I read. You know, it's fantastic. I think, goodness gracious me, 16, not bad. Nice jump.
You're doing well, and you're climbing. And the thing is, it's, you know, I had a #1 in the Heritage chart last year, and when you think there's like 74 countries voting every week, from Uzbekistan, you know, to the States, all across Europe, it's a really nice validation.
Most definitely.
Of your work. So I hope you're soaking this up, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And congratulations to you too.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know, it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah,
you know, I had a couple of top 20s before I had the #1. So, you know, I didn't just get there #1 and easy peasy.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to climb.
Well, you know, you become a star overnight after 20 years, right?
Well, I had my moments in the 90s when I was in a boy band. So I then took time away, and I've come back. And you know, you're in more control when you're writing your own stuff, as you know yourself.
Most definitely.
So I want to ask you about another track on the album, if you don't mind. Lulabelle.
Lulabelle's about my wife.
I thought so, because that's your wife's. It says, you know, I was reading your wife's called Lulu. So I just thought, so is it about your wife?
It is. It's and you know that it all stemmed from because I had this sort of new car syndrome and never let her drive my car. So the irony in the song is, if you want, you can drive. Or put your seat right back with you just any time. So it's sort of asking not for forgiveness, but the irony is that it's the complete opposite, and it does, you know, it's very much her. And apparently the analytics, it's doing very well in the States. Lulu Bell, it's got that a bit of that sort of, and I could see the video would be really cool, like ZZ Top.
Yeah, it's more guitar based, isn't it?
Route 66. You know, I put some gas. I got enough gas in the. You know, mind my own business. Wearing my shades. Yeah.
So you've directed it already. So
yeah.
Release
that, you know, that's also that you know, because you've been asking some really interesting questions because you're coming from the same sort of ilk, the same, you know, same sector.
Listen, release present in Europe because it's kind of a bit more electronic, a bit dancey. You know what it's like in Europe.
Yeah.
Get Lulabelle out there in the States. Get onto Route 66 with a bike and get that video shot.
Yeah.
Because over there they love the more guitar-based stuff, don't they?
And I'll tell you what. You know, you asked me before about the process of writing. It's funny because coming from a sort of cinematic, predominantly more of a cinematic background, when I'm writing a song like Photograph, I can see the imagery of it, and that's what really helps me write the next line, is because I can see the visual of here's that, and then there's the corruption, and then here's that child running, and then there's the warlord taking their lives, and why don't we all come together? You know, that really has helped enormously.
Fantastic. Your pictures are in your mind, aren't they? So it's helping you go to the next step.
Most definitely.
I can see already you've got that next album sewn up.
Yes.
You know, you're overflowing with it all. It's great. It's really good. Just for the viewers that don't know much about being a UNICEF ambassador, I just want to draw it back to that for a second. If you wouldn't mind just explaining the role of a UNICEF ambassador, which obviously was what your father was.
Yes. Well, it was thanks to Audrey Hepburn who introduced him to, and they created the Goodwill Ambassador role. So basically, with his fame, is to go around and create awareness, to you know, go to these dinners and say, please help out, and people would donate checks. And you know, it is tricky because you think how complicated it all is, and how does the money actually get to do good and to places. And you can see that with UNICEF, they are quite serious about it, and that has proven to work. So he felt very confident supporting that organization.
And some of the profits from you and I will be going to that.
Absolutely.
It's a great cause. So you're carrying on your father's tradition, which is admirable.
It's in his memory, and you know, it was the shooting the videos the last time I saw him alive, and he's in it. So it's brilliant when I see it. He's still alive. It's fantastic. I never really
lovely shot of your dad when he's mouthing the words, you know.
And I mean, he was in hospital. He'd been in hospital for a couple of months, and he'd been going through chemo, you know. And
so, very brave man, you know. But you know what? You're his boy. He did it for his boy.
Yeah,
and and your daughter Amber was involved as well. So you know, he probably thought, I'm going to get up and do this for him, you know.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful, Jaffa. I was going to say Jeffrey. It's been wonderful talking to you. I look forward to talking to you when you have another single, and you've been shooting the video in California or somewhere.
Yes. Listen, thanks for having me. Thanks for fantastic questions. Really.
Thank you for joining us on Livewire.
Really refreshing.
Cheers. All the best.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the show this week, Jaffa. And thank you for watching. We'll see you again for more Livewire very soon.
My name is Michael Caine, and you are watching You and I.
Beginning of our time, we've crossed this land so blind, and children are in despair, but do we really care?
Some of us have more to give, and others have no place to live. You know, deep down inside, we really care.
Picture yourself in a magical sky that is we're dying. Here we are, still alive to survive. We gotta help each other. If we come together, gotta love one another. You and I, still alive, we decide we can make it better. If we come together, it can last forever. Get together side by side. This time we can make it right. We need to share this every day to make a better world.
Know that there has come that day. Get together and we will stay step by step, side by side, in a better world.
Here we are, you and I, to survive. We gotta help each other. If we come together, gotta love one another. You and I, still alive, we decide we can make it better. If we come together, it can last forever. Hey. Oh. Hey. Oh. Picture yourself in a magical sky.